Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I am H.A. Conrad, coming to you from Brooklyn with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin, on the other side of the United States. Hello, Stuart.
Yo, how you doing?
Are things not burning anymore, or still burning, but burning under control? How are things?
I don't want to talk about fire. It hasn't rained, so we're not like out of the woods completely, but we got to 100% containment on Kincaid last week.
Woohoo, that's good.
Yeah, that's great. And I drove actually into the burn area yesterday, Friday, and it was pretty smoky smelling still, just because everything's burned. And they're busy cutting down all the trees along the right of way so they don't collapse on the road. It's still a mess. This is, like we said last time, this is going to be a long time to get back from. And we just kind of started climbing out of the hole from the last one. So that's just where we are.
All right. Well, keep fighting the good fight, my friend. But, we're here for you if you need it. So this week we, as we had unveiled in our last episode, we'll be talking about season 9 of Walking Dead. So we're going to jump into those recaps. This week we're talking about the first couple of episodes. Before we get into that, news is a little sparse, but there's a couple of little pieces. One is from Comics Beat, and it's about comparing Dawn of the Dead zombies with Walking Dead zombies. Somebody put a lot of thought into this. But I don't know that it necessarily gives any new observations, though I did think it was interesting how they laid it out and some of the differences that they talked about. But, there's a 2-part series about this, and both, I don't know that this was necessary, but hey, it's there.
There's no observations that are being made in this article that weren't made probably when The Walking Dead first came out.
Yeah, so anyway, it had a couple little interesting little videos or whatever, and somebody obviously put some time into it, so maybe take a gander if you feel the need to. If you're feeling like you need some undead news. Next up, there is a book that is coming out or did come out, and it is called Last Ones Left Alive by Sarah Davis Goff. And it's getting some mixed reviews, though apparently the zombie battle scenes are getting pretty good reviews as far as the book goes. So I may pick this up, and I'll let you know if there's anything further that we should talk about, or if you should dive in to read this, Stuart.
So, I'm just curious, what makes this feminist fiction?
I think it's all based around women and this woman's survival on this island with her survivor women. I don't know, but
okay.
That's
so maybe
like,
it's like an Oceanside scenario then, as opposed to a virus that only infects men.
I don't know, but maybe I'll find out more as I read the book. It depends on. I will admit to you, it will depend on how expensive the book is. Like, I don't mind dropping a couple bucks on it, but I'm not going to drop like $16 on it. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll see if I can get like a sample first before diving into this. But I'm all into reading new zombie fiction, and I'm cool if somebody comes up with a new way to look at it. So I will give it a chance.
One note of caution: the publisher is Tinder.
Yeah, I know. I saw that, which I'm like,
Is that just some sort of
don't
copyright
know.
oversight?
Perhaps. But we'll see. I'll report back next time to give you a little bit more information on this.
All
and
right.
then you found this.
I want to report in on something. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've talked on this podcast maybe some might say too many times about the world of online streaming Dungeons and Dragons. So Critical Role is this group of voice actors who have actually kind of gotten big in the last couple of years because they did a Kickstarter that went bananas. To make an animated TV show or web series of loosely based on their last D&D campaign. It, by the way, was picked up last week by Amazon for 2 seasons. So they've kind of gotten huge somehow. But they are all talented. But one of the side projects they've done in the last 6 months is something called Undeadwood. And they are all huge pop culture fans. They are all huge Deadwood fans. And so they've taken a role-playing game format, not D&D. This one is based on like D6s and D4s. I don't really understand the rules of the game. There's a lot of cards and like poker rules in it also. And they are playing through this campaign in full regalia. Like, they're all dressed up like cowboys and dames in the town of Deadwood. And the dungeon master role plays Al Swearingen and other characters from the show. And and Carrie Payton is one of the players in this game too. So he's King Ezekiel from Walking Dead, and in this game he's playing a character called Aloysius Fogg, and it's just a lot of fun to watch if you have many hours to put it
All
on in
right.
the background or something. It's good time.
All right. I will I will check this out. I will check this out at your recommendation. So, all right. So, given that we have some sparse news, are you ready to jump into episodes 1 and 2 of The Walking Dead season 9?
I'm ready for a new beginning.
I am too. Which is directed by Greg Nicotero and written by Angela Kang.
New showrunner for this season, Angela Kang.
And I'm a big fan of Angela's. I like her. So we have a new beginning, and we have The Bridge, which are the first 2 episodes. And so since it's been a while since we have talked about The Walking Dead, this is after the big defeat of Negan and his whole community, and
And in the bigger picture, this is after like 2 or 3 seasons of the ongoing battle
Yeah.
against the Saviors.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of finally like we got over that hilltop, and this is what's waiting for us on the other side.
Right. And I think just to sort of set the table a little bit, so we've got the community of Hilltop, we've got the
right.
Sanctuary, and the Kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Anybody else I'm forgetting? Oh, and the
Oceanside.
Oceanside. So we got these 4 things. And basically, this is fast forwarded a little bit clearly because you've got, food being like grown and like a sort of communication between these different settlements. And Rick's grown a healthy looking beard. So, and this is apparently 18 months after the whole defeat. Though feels a little longer. Didn't that feel a little bit like that to you? I don't know.
Well, this season gets a little bit wonky with the time stuff. So this is a time jump, and then coming up there's another one. So
Right.
that's why I can feel. But certainly the new credits, which don't happen until after the cold open, the new opening credits sequence that Angela Kang, I assume, this is like her thing.
Mm-hmm.
They feel very much like passage of time, breaking
Yep.
down of the old world. So that kind
True.
of it lends to this feeling of, wow, like it's been a while. But then you look at Judith, and she's still the same little girl actress who she was played by,
Yep.
or the 2 sisters who she was played by in previous seasons. So it can't have been that much time, I guess.
Right. And a lot of this is, now that we're not fighting against each other, which you and I have long discussed, I don't know that they would have had the energy to fight like that against each other given the level of resources and things like that going on. But anyway, I digress. So what happens now? I mean, you've got these different settlements. You've got definitely still a little bit of conflict because of the way Negan ran things and the way these communities are going to have to try to figure out how to do things. The ability to just even do simple things like plowing is kind of hard, and so this is just because you don't have fuel, and unlike in Fear the Walking Dead where they come upon this whole fuel field to run their big rigs all over the place, they are definitely on horseback here or foot.
And they're making biofuel out of corn.
Yeah, but still, like, not a ton. And they're limiting that to use for sort of doing things for crops and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But in any case, we kind of open up to this combined effort with Rick leading a group to DC to basically go and scavenge in one of the museums for, like, pioneer-type supplies, like plows, and I will admit to you a couple of the things that they're trying to get out of here and how they're getting them out. I'm a little puzzled, but
What's the most puzzling thing?
the big wagon, like
I think the wagon makes sense. The canoe was the one I was like, really? Do we need a wooden dugout log when you can just go and get canoes at any big Bass Pro fishing shop?
Well, right. And the wagon makes sense, yes, but the way they're getting it out and how, like, this whole thing was just so ridiculous with the glass floor. Oh, give me a break.
This was shot in like the was it the state capitol?
Yeah.
In Georgia?
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
So but like, come on, it's just little dramas for drama's sake, but fine. I'll give you that, I guess. There's a few little funny setups, like they have the evolution or slash de-evolution of man
That was
thing
funny.
going on. That was kind of funny. There's definitely like the rapport between people is cool. You've got everybody like, these are people that have known each other a long time. They're definitely, at least in this particular setting, they're all working together, and
Yeah,
they're working.
Jadis is like one of them now, or they. What does
Yep,
she go by now? Something a different name.
Anne.
And she's hooked up also with Father Gabriel. I don't know if that was apparent in the first episode, but
Yeah, they got something going on.
it is interesting how these relationships are changing. There's nobody from the old Saviors group in this mission,
No,
though, right?
no.
Yeah, but
So they're kind of doing their thing in the museum. They're combining efforts. There's definitely that. It is interesting to think about the things that they are now having to focus on now that they have these like several communities to support. There's and we get into this through these two episodes, is that there's like some tension because some communities have more than others, and some have more of an ability to grow food or to do whatever. Hilltop is especially rich in terms of the amount of like land, fertile land that they have, and ability to grow food. So
and
they
the fact that they have a blacksmith. I mean, they
right,
honestly they're like top loaded with good stuff. But
right,
like, what
and
does
a dot,
Alexandria bring to the
right,
table, other than maybe some manpower? But yeah, like
yeah.
they're just a subsistence community. They can like generate power themselves, but they don't seem to make anything.
Right, and like I did like how this episode sets up how just sort of like, I don't want to say a simple thing, but sort of like a search for some of the basic things is an all-out effort. It's hard, it's long, and it's dangerous. So, and we see that because there's first in the museum they're trying to get all this stuff out. The floor breaks. They almost lose our king. They, in a very dramatic fashion, but they get him back. They get him back last minute.
It's also kind of a cool, scary scene with dude, who's the new doctor? What's his name?
Oh gosh, I don't know, but he's a
The guy
cool
who killed
doctor.
Carl. Yeah,
Yep,
Sadiq maybe. I think
yep.
Sadiq. The spider zombie that he runs into.
Oh yeah, that was like crazy. Very, very Greg Nicotero though, so I was kind of like, oh, Greg, good job there.
It was also like
Um,
the least amount of practical effects that we've seen from Nicotero in a while.
True, true. There's a lot of CG going on, CGI. But it's sort of a nice little reintroduction to who the people are. Carol is all knee deep into this relationship, so that's kind of cute.
Hmm.
Um, and we have them going along, but it's sort of short lived, this cooperation. We see some of the tensions like that are laid out in this episode. So very specifically, we still got Maggie won an election apparently on Hilltop. And
What's interesting and worth pointing out here too, before you talk about the differences that they have, is at the
Mhm.
museum, Maggie is very much like, oh yeah, let's all get along to get along,
Right,
like we're gonna help the sanctuary and they're gonna help us and it's gonna be great. And so there's a whole
right.
different tune being sung when they're all together doing work like they used to do. But then as
Well,
yeah,
I also think, okay, and some of this, I don't want to say it goes away, but it shifts a little once they lose. They have a death, and it's a really, they definitely set it up because they make you like this character. But Kenneth, who is, um, basically the son of the blacksmith in the Hilltop community,
I do
ends
have
up,
underlying problems with this death,
yeah,
with how it goes down, because there's a small herd that comes on them,
uh
and they're
huh,
like, "We got to get out of here, run away, Ken, run, let's go." And he's like, "No, I got to free the horse." And then he gets bit and kicked in the chest by a horse, like he's
yeah,
double doomed. But then
yeah.
they're like, "Let's save his life, and we're just gonna kill the herd." And they kill all the zombies, and then there's no more threat. And I'm like, "Why? What?
Why couldn't
How?"
you just done that,
That's
right?
like that would have solved this problem from the beginning. Why can't we be cool that way, guys?
Right. And
No, no.
also they are definitely have enough experience at this point to have been able to do that. Agreed. I felt like it was a little bit ridiculous. And I also feel like everybody, even Ken, knows enough. And like I know that they wouldn't put the horses at risk because they need them. So they're going to need to protect them. You know what I mean? I just don't see them leaving them there. So I found that to be a little implausible. But in any case, Kenneth dies, and his parents, like, I also found this to be kind of crazy. It's like his parents blame Maggie, and suddenly the tensions. Well, but suddenly, and look, grief does a lot of things, and I'm not saying that that's implausible, but some of the tensions, like in the community, look, they've been living in this world a really long time. Everybody knows the risk of going out on one of these missions. Like, that is not questionable. Like, I just feel like that is something that is obvious. And for them to turn so quickly seems kind of crazy. And, but they use this basically as a vehicle to show the tension in the Hilltop community. Gregory is still, and also, like, God, really? You're going to let Gregory run free in this community, run rampant? Like, that guy should be locked up somewhere. If Negan's locked up, this guy should be locked up. And so the fact that they're letting him run around and stir stuff up, I find to be, like, ridiculous. I mean, I guess maybe there's a little bit of a political argument if people still back him. Maybe it's helpful to have him out there, but all he does is do exactly what he has always done, is cause trouble. And in this case, he's been, apparently he ran up against Maggie in the election. He wasn't elected. And I was really bothered by the fact that suddenly it's like, oh, I didn't win the election. It must have been rigged and all this stuff. And granted, you could totally see this sort of scenario happening. But he pissed off the people of Hilltop pretty badly, right? Like,
I mean, they should be more pissed off than they are. But
right.
Not everybody was at the sanctuary when he sold them out and, or all the other times that he sold them out.
Right, but it's not that big of a community, and it's enough that they supported Maggie, so I don't really find this tenuous support of her believable.
But I'm also not seeing any of the familiar faces from Hilltop. Like, this episode focuses on the blacksmith and his wife and Ken, I guess, and Jesus and Maggie. But you're not seeing these other folks who, like, God, I can't remember any of their names anymore. But there were a couple. There was the woman who made pies, who was also a volunteer to fight with Maggie. There was the guy with the ponytail. There were a couple
of regulars, and you're not seeing any of them.
They're not around. Yeah, so it doesn't give you this impression that, like, you still know this community, at least for my position.
Not same thing. But basically, this is the sort of big point of conflict and what we're setting up. And look, I think that these things are believable, and I don't know that they necessarily needed to sort of like create it in this way, but fine. So you've got, and Maggie's tune totally changes after the death of Kenneth, because the community is no longer supporting her, and people have been saying, like, look, Hilltop's supporting Sanctuary, Hilltop's giving too much, and we are seeing that this is happening.
But like Jesus is saying, we do have surplus.
Right.
And her response, instead of like, yeah, we do have surplus, we can share, is like, how long are we going to have surplus? So... Right. I still think, I mean, I'm not there, and it's a fictional story and all this stuff, but she's getting very protection, isolationist all of a sudden.
Right.
And I think Maggie is not right, and then I don't enjoy the way I certainly don't like the way the final scene of this episode goes.
Oh, yeah, and I don't buy it as something she would do, honestly. So there's that too. I do think that some of the issues that they're laying out in this episode are interesting to discuss and interesting to think about. And you've got Michonne, who, like, at the museum has seen the whole, like, Constitution, that big blow up thing at the museum. And she's like, maybe we should start writing our own, Constitution is basically what she's saying, or Bill of Rights. And look, these are some things that people will have to think about. And I think that these are good ideas, because then they give everybody a sense of what you're trying to make in a civilization. And that's sort of what people have done throughout time to get everybody on board, so that there aren't just these disparate factions. And, if you have everybody pulling in the same direction, that keeps hopefully keeps peace and keeps somebody like Negan from taking advantage, or Gregory for that matter.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But the assassination attempt on Maggie's life is pretty cold-blooded.
Yep.
Like,
and so,
mega. Also, they get Earl to dress up like the Grim Reaper or something.
I know. So Earl is the blacksmith and Ken's dad, and in Grief, he's not. They make a point that he hasn't been drinking He's been sober for many years, and then Gregory tempts him into it. He's really stirring it up, specifically with him, which is interesting because his wife seems to be more down on Maggie and down on the community.
She's the voice. She's one of the voices that drives Earl to what he ends up doing. But then also it's clearly Gregory, but she is like she's pretty acerbic, and I don't. Yeah, I'm happy when she goes to sleep in this episode.
Me too. But in any case, there's an attempt on Maggie's life. Badass that she is, she manages with a little bit of help from Enid.
Enid and then a few other folks run up too.
Yeah.
But Enid gets knocked the F out.
Yeah.
Little Herschel gets knocked out of his stroller, which is the craziest
terrible.
thing.
And
how that wouldn't give anybody pause, even Earl in his, stupor.
Yeah. But in any case, this is, she gets a pretty good knock on her, and then she goes and confronts Gregory about it, and then basically calls him a coward and says, "Look, your assassination attempt failed."
I don't really understand why he tries to then stab her, because he's never been the guy who would actually try to kill someone himself. Right. And I felt like that was fairly established, and it's not like,
well, the whole sending Earl is totally his MO.
Yeah.
But also he can claim sort of innocence in that and just say Earl was wasted or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He could have gotten away scot-free, which is very much his MO, which is why he kind of set up Earl for that. So I agree with you. I was like, really, why is he doing this? This doesn't even make sense. And maybe it's just the actor wanted off of the show. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah, so he tries to stab her. She kind of quickly disarms him, and he does his whimpering Gregory thing, which happens every time he tries to go up against somebody slightly tougher than him, which is just about everybody. And then that's that, except for
the very
what
end.
Happened. Yeah, except for what happens next.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, with Gregory, as you and I have said multiple times, he shouldn't be out in the community. He shouldn't be out doing anything. He shouldn't have his freedom. Every time he has not just had one second chance, he has had many second chances, and continues to prove that he is a person who cannot be part of a community in this way. And the weird thing about it all is that, I don't even see how Hilltop would have been as successful at all with him at the helm. He just gives away way too much, way too easily. He gives up, he backs down, and it's, I feel like even with the deal that they had made with Negan and his team would have taken advantage of that far more than they did.
They've never shown him to be an effective administrator
leader
of anything.
Yeah.
They've never shown him being assigning people jobs or anything, which makes you think, was it Jesus who was always running the Hilltop, or some of these other guys who were getting killed when we first meet the Hilltoppers? Those guys who had been sent to
maybe
talk to the saviors and then try to kill Gregory. It's hard to say, but the show never did a good job of showing that he was an effective leader. That's true.
Right. And, the aftermath of all these assassination attempts is that when Michonne and Rick show up and basically talk, and they've seen the sanctuary needs help, they don't have food, and she's now being nope, we're not going to help unless we get help. And I think that there should be fair trade between the communities, and you've kind of got to figure things out in that way. What Rick wants is and this seems kind of weird to me because they've got a lot of able-bodied people at the sanctuary. So did you find it odd, this ask? I don't basically Rick was wanting Maggie to do the whole effort to fix the bridge that's out.
Well, I think he meant to lend labor and material, but
maybe, but it still feels like you've got a lot of untapped labor at Sanctuary. That should probably be also said, hey, we're all willing to pitch in here because that's how this kind of thing works. And that felt like, it did feel like they were asking a lot again. And he even says it, we're asking a lot.
Yeah.
But she basically says, look, you guys have to give us some fuel so we can make crops. And I guess part of me was like, well, why can't they all sit down at a table and say, hey, this is what we need to feed everybody. It's not just us, just Hilltop giving stuff over. It's that we all have to work basically in harmony so that we all can live and not starve.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't feel
that,
like they've put a lot of thought, groupthink into how they're going to work as a collection of settlements.
right. And, even though they do have a lot of the land, like, hey, if you have people that can provide some of the labor for, like, basically planting those crops and whatever, that seems like a pretty obvious thing to come up with and have like a quid pro quo kind of thing, right? Um, so anyway, but now we're
So that
at the
that final on the balcony, not final, it's before she kills Gregory, but she talks to Rick about how, hey, once upon a time you said that soon you'll be following me, and that never happened because I wasn't someone to follow, and that's going to change. I feel like that
Mhm.
is such a dick thing to say to somebody.
Yeah, totally.
And then she's like, it's time to put the children to bed,
Yep.
um, because I have to go murder Gregory now, or
Yep.
sorry, not murder, but execute.
Execute. And that's the thing. So she goes out and they're going to publicly execute Gregory. And my thing about this is that they have made, like, for example, Negan Negan, who is responsible for countless deaths and horrible things and torture and all of that stuff, is still in jail. And I don't buy that Maggie's going to get to executing Gregory this quickly.
No, she
And not
wanted to kill Negan.
she did, but you know, we've got other people, and I'm sort of surprised that Jesus and other folks didn't weigh in here with her, but or more effectively. And I don't know, but she puts the blacksmith. He's in jail. And I don't really, I mean, maybe it's just that she feels that Gregory is such a corrosive element, which he is. But again, I don't feel like he would be this effective. I think people would just sort of be like, oh, Gregory is such a loser. I don't feel like he would be this powerful. And by her executing him, this is a very Negan like thing to do, which is probably where they're going with this, to draw those kinds of similarities between them. But they have this whole big scene where these kids run up and at the last minute see him being executed. And I think this is supposed to somehow put her into the hey, I'm not messing around anymore kind of a leadership thing. I don't know, but it doesn't feel right, and it definitely doesn't feel like something Maggie would do to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's arguments there, but I would say that in the wake of Glenn's exit from the show and introduction of Herschel, you could see how her priorities would get
Maybe.
reoriented.
Maybe. I also think that, this is also some of the things, and I do like the fact that they're bringing up these issues, but for example, she's not killing the blacksmith because they need the blacksmith.
Yeah,
He's got a skill
Gregory
set.
serves no purpose whatsoever
Yeah,
other than
yeah,
to stir the feces. So
right.
yeah, exit stage left for Gregory.
All
It's
right.
kind of messed up that she makes Daryl her headsman. Like, find
Yeah,
someone from your own damn community or do it yourself. Like,
right,
have be the Ned Stark who can do it, swing
right.
the sword
If
instead
you're
of
going to
making
do it, you
your
take care of it.
poor wandering friend who has no conscience when it comes to this stuff. So he's fine with it, I guess. But
Mm,
own that.
yeah.
I found that to be kind of BS.
Yeah.
But like an easy way out too, like I said, because Daryl's not actually going to lose any sleep over it.
Right.
But so then after that, we go to the next episode, which jumps forward 30 days.
Yep. And they're in the full on, and Maggie has already said to Rick and Michonne, like, hey, we can do the bridge thing, but you guys have got to provide a lot of the labor, and we'll get the fuel, and we'll all, like, so she lays out things in that way, and that's kind of what's happening. So they are repairing this bridge.
And it looks like they're pretty much done, doesn't
Yep.
it?
Yep. All the communities are working together. They've been having some problems with the survivors, who just keep
The
kind of
saviors.
saviors rather.
The survivors.
They're survivors, sanctuary saviors,
So six
Um,
of them have gone missing since the
right.
start of this project, I guess. Which
Well,
that's not good. I don't know how many they have. It's like 30 or 40 out there doing this work.
right.
That's clearly a problem.
Well, and also, we have the one guy that they keep highlighting as being a douche.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, there's two saviors who are being highlighted, and they're both really recognizable. One of
Right.
them's from Entourage, and he was
Right.
the amazing director of their terrible movie, and I can't remember that dude's name, but he always plays a dick. And then the other one, the long haired one, is from Black Sails and a few other things like that, and he's also an amazing douchebag on that show.
Yeah.
But they're great. They're great evil character actors.
Yeah, and Justin is the one that we see a lot, the one that's like on the bridge being a dick.
Yeah.
And he's being a dick. We've seen him be a dick both in the sanctuary and on the bridge. And my, like, you know, I guess part of it is that I don't believe that they would put any level of responsibility in the hands of somebody like this, because clearly he cannot be relied upon to do anything that
But
is
he's strong.
remotely...
That's his only.
Well,
only
that's
positive
fine,
feature.
but do you really think that they would give him the responsibility that they did? I don't think so. So
this actor's name, just so for the record, is Zach McGowan, and he was on Shield and Shameless and Black Sails and The 100. And then the other one is who plays this guy called Jed, who has short dark hair. His name is Reese Coiro, I guess, and he's the one from Entourage. So so we have those two.
I wonder if both of them have on their, like, you know, headshots, can play a douche with ease or something. Like I wonder if that's like the part of their like their typecasting.
And hopefully that's not the way they're going.
I mean, they're very effective in this. I'm not like giving them a hard time. I think they're both great, but
clearly they have some internal douche characteristics.
Right. But anyway, you know, they sort of play up the fact that there is conflict. We do see some people getting along just fine, and we see moments of this, and that's interesting. We see Enid is basically studying under the doctor, and she's becoming a medic, and that's kind of cool. Yeah.
And the female saviors who we catch glimpses of, we get a couple of lines from them. What are their names? So Elizabeth Ludlow plays Arat. Mm-hmm. And I think there's Lindsley Register and Tracy Dinwiddle are the three women who are like, they're like, Tracy Dinwiddle played Regina. She was one of Negan's top lieutenants. Yeah. We see there's a scene of her walking along next to Lindsley Register, who's the blonde with a neck tattoo, and they're like smiling, and it's like a heartwarming scene. Like everybody's happy, right? And Arat is also like, she's not being a tough guy anymore, even though that was kind of her role under Negan. So the women saviors seem to be kind of like adapted. But then, of course, you have to have some saviors who have not made that transition from douche. And so I think it's really necessary to have the Justin and Jed characters to do that.
Well, I guess my only sort of, like, in terms of sort of where this is that, okay, it's been 18 plus months since all of that happened.
True, that's a pretty long time.
I feel like some of the things that we're seeing now are things that would probably happen closer to the beginning of the transition, because the saviors, especially the ones that were higher up, didn't do any work other than they were like sort of the enforcers and the heavies in terms of that stuff. They never had to do hard labor.
And now they do.
But I kind of feel like if these people didn't want to do that and were like, they would just go off, they would have gone off long ago. So it feels a little weird to me that just because they're making a bridge, that this is, you know, it feels,
part of the narrative
feels a little
here,
contrived.
I mean, I don't disagree, but part of the narrative here is that their crops have failed, and now there's a resurgence of Neganism with the graffiti at Sanctuary, and so that's what we're also facing, is that while there probably were some good times when they still had food to eat and everything, currently they have all their crops have failed, and they are now kind of, you know, regressing back to Negan douchey.
Right. Well, okay, fine. And, you know, so there's some good parts of this where they're all working together, but then the parts where it fails is that the douchey guy, Justin, is supposed to be in charge of turning a herd, and they don't get turned, and this results in them overrunning one of the work crews, and Aaron gets his arm crushed, which is pretty gross scene.
Squished.
It's really gross.
Justin has also had an interaction with Henry where he knocked Henry down when he was bringing him water, and that kind of leads up to the what happens after he then doesn't call off the herd. He's already kind of on Rick's shit list at that point. And
and just continues to be a douche, basically. Enid steps up and amputates Aaron's arm.
Without anesthetic.
Which was rough. That is a pretty rough scene. So much so that, like, Daryl runs out of the tent, and I thought they were going to have him puke, but he doesn't. He holds it in. But it's pretty rough. We've got but even despite all this, we still have people that are working together, and we still have saviors kind of running off. But I'm kind of like, good riddance to those saviors, unless, I guess the concern is that they might start their own faction, right? Um, and then we've also got Anne and Gabriel canoodling, um,
Yep.
which is kind of strange. They keep talking about frogs mating, which is a little bizarre.
And
Um,
also at the very end of this episode, sees a helicopter or
yep.
a drone.
And we had started out this episode with Rick talking to somebody. I assumed it was Negan, though still at the end of this episode, I wonder why he goes and talks to Negan. Why is he giving Negan all the information about this community? That seems a little stupid to me, no?
Well, it's part of his, like, in a way, like this plan of theirs to keep him alive, just to prove to him that they were right. It feels kind of inferior. Like
Right?
it feels like we need you to agree with us so badly. We're gonna keep you alive and talk to you for a
Right, and
long time.
because
And I'm just like, what's the
and
point? Why
and
bother?
also Negan is so, Negan, that it's not like they're ever really gonna convince him of anything. And he's just like a pot stirrer. Of course he's gonna like sit there and try to like stir Rick up, which is exactly what he does.
Yeah.
And also if you've got like, I think one of the things that both of these episodes point out is that leadership is really hard. It is very hard to get a community of people to work and pull together, to
Mm-hmm.
have, even when people agree. And I mean, look, I think there's obvious parallels that they're drawing with our current political climate, right? So it's very hard, even in the best of circumstances, to be a leader and to have a successful, productive community, because there's always going to be voices of dissension. I guess the question is what to do with those voices. How do you manage that? And then you've got like the danger of having Negan alive and actually Gregory alive is that you've got these former leaders, and I think you're always going to have people that don't like, there's never going to be somebody who is in charge of anything that everybody agrees with 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need to necessarily, but I do think that when times get tough, people are always like, oh, well, what about that other person that was just in here? It was better under them. Like, people have a little bit of a, like, rose colored, like, hindsight, basically, like looking through rose colored lenses. And
There's a
so,
whole movement in Germany, which is where I used to live. There's a whole movement called Ostalgie, which means Ost means east in German. So it's nostalgia for the way it was in East Germany, which is
right.
former Soviet Union, because at least they had some sort of better quality of life.
Right.
So there is actually, like, yeah, this is a thing. This is definitely a thing.
It's a thing. So I think it's interesting that they're laying this out here. And, I think it's also true that no matter what sort of change happens, everybody's not going to be happy. And this is something that Negan has pointed out. Like, you're not going to make somebody will always be, get the short end of the stick. No, just because it's very hard. Like, if you're working as like a group, it's very hard to have all those disparate belief systems and motivations, and you can't, it's impossible to make everybody happy. You can have a consensus, but you're always are going to have a dissension on some level.
You kind of get the feeling that Rick is just worn out by all of this too.
Yeah, and he's kind of like,
and he's struggling.
And honestly, Daryl too. Daryl doesn't really want to be a leader, and they've kind of put him in charge of the sanctuary, which seems to me like the worst place in the world to put this poor guy.
But Daryl's also kind of being a dick to Rick. Like,
yeah.
Rick is being kind of left increasingly alone by his allies to just handle everything. Because because Daryl thinks that the saviors aren't worth working with. He thinks that they're just they can't change because there's a couple of bad actors. I mean, we could clearly see when they go to the sanctuary that there are people who are really into Rick, that they really are like, yeah, you're the best, and damn Negan. But then, yeah, sure, you've got bad actors like Justin and Jed and whoever else. But so Daryl's painting them all with the same brush. Maggie is being all isolationist, and if it ain't Hilltop, it ain't for me. And that does leave Rick in a really kind of bad situation where he has a core of good people. The Kingdom is apparently just a bunch of really awesome people to get along with, even though they lost all of their soldiers.
They seem pretty
war.
happy and positive. They're like the most positive people. And
Oceanside have been kind of weirdly quiet. We might find out why.
Yeah.
And Alexandria aren't making a peep either, really, because their leadership are the ones who are kind of keeping an even keel. So, so you've got like Daryl, who even though he doesn't really, I mean, I guess he stands for sanctuary in a way, but he hates them, and Maggie are being kind of dicks. And that
Yeah.
leaves Mr. Grimes in a bad situation. I feel
Yeah.
bad for him.
Totally. But, I'm cool with how they're setting up some of this, if not about some of the storytelling. But I like the idea that these are issues that are being brought up, and they're things that we've had a hard time to examining because there hasn't been enough, there's been all the conflict up until this point with with the saviors and things like that. Now, at the end of this episode, we bring back like there's this weird thing with Anne, slash Jadis sitting on top of a lookout and sees like a helicopter. My only comment on that is that it's making noise. It's pretty silent out there. I think she wouldn't be the only one who notices this. What do you think?
Well, I was listening for that, and they made it sound like it was that helicopter noise that kind of just comes into your ear consciousness and then fades away. And she's up above the tree canopy on a cherry picker. I think there's a chance. It was pretty high.
All right.
I think they made enough concessions in the production to make me believe that not everybody was going to wake up to that.
All right, that's I wanted. I made a note to ask you about that because I was like, and then I don't want to say they leave it on a cliffhanger, but Justin, because of his douchiness, has been banished from the community, and he gets attacked or something on the way back. We don't see exactly what happens to him, but he
By
seems
somebody he knows, though.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I almost attacked you," and then blackout. So I guess we will find out what happens to him. Again, I guess, because I don't remember because this has been a while, in the next couple of episodes. Any other observations?
No, I mean, it's good to come back to what I remember as being a good season of The Walking Dead after Fear, season 5. I'm still salty about that, and I will be
Me
for
too.
a long time. So I'm glad that we get to kind of use this as our mouthwash, because season 9, as in my recollection, was a good season of The Walking Dead.
Great. So if anybody has comments or feels like rewatching the season with us or watching it for the first time, send us a note. Let us know what you think. Reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can leave a note on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com. And thanks, as always, for listening. And until next time, ciao.
Thanks for listening. Also, she said that, but I'm saying it too. And bye-bye.